Another twist in a true crime case that spanned nearly 5 decades.
What were you thinking?
When I grabbed him, I shot him.
A man convicted of kidnapping and killing a 6-year-old boy could walk free. We'll explain why a New York judge made the shocking ruling. This is Inside the Crime, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Elizabeth Millner. This case has spanned long, since before I was even born. There have been true crime documentaries, a Law & Order SVU episode. The victim was even one of the first missing children to be pictured on a milk carton. Then a man confessed to his murder. So how is it possible a killer could still walk free? To understand this case, we have to turn the clock back to 1979. It was a completely different world from 2025. No smartphones, no Ring cameras, no social media apps, but sadly still there was crime, even when you least expected it. On May 25th of 1979, first grader Etan Patz was likely so excited to finally walk alone to the bus stop. The bus stop was just a block and a half away from his home. But remember being a kid and remembering that first time you were able to walk to school or to the bus stop alone? You felt on top of the world, right? Finally, you're a big kid. So on that day, Etan's mom, Julie, took him downstairs, said her goodbyes, and watched as he walked toward the bus stop. What's eerie is that was supposed to be an exciting moment, but that would be the last time Julie Patz saw Etan. He never made it back home. He never even made it to school that day. It's one of every parent's worst nightmares. When he didn't return home, Etan's mom, Julie, called police, sparking a huge manhunt for the 6-year-old. The search went on for weeks. Still no sign of Etan. And remember, it's the late 70s. No quick social media posts to get the word out. But there was another way to get publicity about the case. Put photos of missing children on milk cartons. And it became huge. But while Etan's case had a huge spotlight on it, he was considered missing for years. The first break in the case came in 1985 when prosecutors ID'd Jose Antonio Ramos as a prime suspect. Jose had a disturbing past too. He was convicted of child sexual abuse. In the early 80s, multiple boys accused him of trying to lure them into a drain pipe area near where Jose was living. When police searched the area, they found a photo of Jose with a young boy who looked like Etan. But prosecutors also found Jose was in custody in Pennsylvania for an unrelated child molestation case. Jose Ramos was the prime suspect for Etan's disappearance for years, but they were never able to prosecute him for Etan's disappearance, and Etan's body was never found. However, in 2001, he was declared legally dead after Etan's parents filed a lawsuit against Jose for wrongful death. Jose reportedly refused to answer questions under oath, and by 2004, now 25 years after Etan was last seen alive, a New York State court awarded the Patzes $2 million in damages. But they were never able to collect the money. The case seemed cold for years. Then in 2010, the Manhattan District Attorney announced he was reopening the case. 2 years later, the FBI and NYPD conducted a search near the Patz's home. And on May 24th of 2012, NYPD announced they had a man in custody. According to NYPD at the time, a then 51-year-old Pedro Hernandez confessed to strangling Etan.
And what were you thinking?
When I grabbed him, I shot him.
Uh-huh.
I tried to let go, but my body was shaking and jumping at the same time. And I wanted to let him go, but it was something to cover me. And I was squeezing more and more.
And then what happened?
And then he went like this. And he kind of went down. And I put him in the bag.
Before he went down, when you had your hands on his neck, and before he went down, did he make any sounds?
He was just going, like he didn't breathe. Nothing. No other sound.
At the time Etan went missing, Pedro was 18 years old, working at a convenience store in the area. He told investigators he lured the 6-year-old into the store's basement by promising him a soda. And once inside, Pedro choked him and threw his body away like trash. Prosecutors say he stuffed Etan into a plastic garbage bag hidden inside a box and took it out with the trash. Pedro's defense attorneys have long claimed he has a low IQ, making him susceptible to a false confession. He went on trial, though, but Pedro's first trial ended in a mistrial after one juror refused to convict.
Let me make it very clear that we are frustrated and very disappointed the jury has been unable to come to a decision. Our long ordeal is not over. I don't understand why the jury couldn't come to a verdict but I'm convinced. I heard the evidence just as they did, and I'm convinced.
He went on trial again in 2017 and was convicted of kidnapping and murdering Etan, and he was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Then in July of this year, his sentence was overturned. So now prosecutors are debating whether or not to try him for a third time. His conviction was overturned in part because of the confession. Prosecutors have claimed Pedro was faking or exaggerating his illness because he repeated his confession twice, once before he was read his rights and another time after his rights were read. But the jury had reportedly questioned whether the recorded confessions were valid, especially the first one, since his rights weren't read yet. An appeals court ruled the judge should have provided a better explanation to the jury's questions. Last Thursday, a New York judge told prosecutors, "You have a deadline. Try him by June 1st of 2026 or he goes free." In her ruling, Judge Colleen McMahon wrote, quote, "It is not my job to read the tea leaves and make predictions or estimates about when or how the Supreme Court will act on any petition for certiorari that may be filed. The mandate, my marching order, simply directs that I set an end date by which any retrial must commence and order Hernandez freed if a retrial does not commence by that date." In response to the judge's decision, Pedro's defense attorney, Harvey Fishbein, said, "We again urge the DA that justice demands that there not be a third trial in this now 46-year-old case against a 64-year-old man who unjustly spent the last 13 years in prison." So how likely is it that we could see a third trial for Pedro Hernandez, who is now in his mid-60s? I'm joined now by former prosecutor, now criminal defense attorney, Julie Rindelman. Julie, always great to see you. Thanks for joining me. So much has obviously changed from 1979. Etan's parents no longer live in the city. Pedro Hernandez is older. Witnesses are older. Do you think prosecutors will actually retry him again?
We don't know. We know that I believe they're looking for, I think it's approximately 50 different witnesses that they're trying to pull together, and they have a limited amount of time to do it. And so, again, I think they're on a time crunch. And so, as we know, evidence gets stale over time. But this case was tried, the last case was tried I think, in 2017. Mm-hmm. So it certainly wasn't back in 1979. They have to find, I think it's about 50 witnesses that they need to re-interview. I don't even think the same prosecutor is there. So they would need a whole team to kind of learn this case again and decide how the strengths of it. Keep in mind that Hernandez has been in jail this entire time, even since the conviction.
And do you think there's a possibility prosecutors can be like, you know what, he served enough time, maybe let's not retry him again because he's been in prison long enough? Do you think that's also a possibility?
I don't think this is going to be a situation where the district attorney's office is thinking to themselves, oh, he's done enough time. I think it's more a logistical issue. Can we get these witnesses in? Do we have the ability to try this case a third time? Don't forget, there was a hung jury. A jury could not decide the first time. The second time, while they found him guilty, they had a lot of questions in regards to the confession. And those were the issues that the appellate court decided were not handled correctly by the judge. So I think the district attorney has a lot of decisions to make about whether or not this is the case to go forward on.
And one argument I found interesting from the defense's perspective was that Pedro had a low IQ and it made it easy for him to make a confession, and that he was more susceptible to making a confession in kind of the fashion that he did because it was one before the Miranda rights were read, then another time after the Miranda rights were read. But what do you make of the defense's argument there?
So I think he has a decent argument. I think that's why the appellate court ruled the way it did, because the jurors' questions were, if we don't believe he voluntarily gave statements before Miranda, how does that impact what he said after Miranda? And so it's not just a question of if someone has a low IQ, that the questions a detective is asking them may be complicated for them. Imagine someone with a low IQ, by the way, someone with potential mental health issues may not fully understand even what the Miranda warnings mean. And so when we talk also about the issue of mental health, we start to question whether or not the statements, the confession he's making is in fact true, or if it's something that he fantasizes to be true.
And it seems like prosecutors kind of have a big hurdle in a way, kind of stacked against them. Obviously, they have the issue about witnesses, but also this whole issue with the confession too. And do you think which will be, if they do decide to retry the case, which would be more of an issue? The witnesses coming back for trial again, or do you think it'll possibly any kind of hiccups when it comes to that confession?
I think the confession is the issue. Look, they could end up not getting witnesses. I'm not sure in terms of essential witnesses. Obviously, they're going to need the detectives and law enforcement that interviewed him at the time, in order to be effective in front of the jury. But I think this is really about the statements. Remember that the whole reason this case came to be was because family members had come forward to say he had made statements indicating something happened with the boy. He never mentioned the name of this child, and we knew that he lived in the neighborhood. But other than that, there was absolutely no corroboration, no forensic evidence that linked him to the body of this 6-year-old child. And so I think the confession is really what's going to dictate A, whether they go forward, and B, whether a jury finds him guilty.
And obviously, Etan Patz, he disappeared in 1979. We're now in 2025, but there have been just so many twists and turns with this case that spanned over decades. But are you surprised that there have been so many twists and turns in this case to the point that we're actually still talking about it today in 2025?
I was young when he disappeared, but I do remember the whole idea of the milk carton, and the idea of because everyone had a milk container, and we always saw a child on there, and that's really where it all started. And it created. I didn't live in New York at the time, but I remember all the stories being told how it created such terror in New York City for those who were letting their little ones out just to walk down the street to go to a school bus. And so, the story took on this incredible attention at the time because it was unsolved for so many years. And so it's always surprising for us to be re-talking about this case. But I think in many ways, it's incredibly important because now we have a 2017 case where an appellate court said that a judge made a mistake, and that mistake may have changed the life of the person that is accused.
So obviously, prosecutors, if they do choose to retry this case, they're on a very tight deadline for the most part. Jury selection has to start by June of 2026. But in my mind, I'm thinking it seems like there could be a lot of room for error again because they're on such a tight deadline.
They are and they aren't. June gives them what, we're not even in January yet. So I think they have the time if they want to put this case together. Remember, it's also the judge's burden to provide a jury with the correct legal instructions. And so, I think this is more going to be a decision-making period of time, and the positives and negatives from the prosecution's perspective of bringing this case back. I do think there are some people out there. Obviously, there's always going to be people out there, but there is disagreement as to whether or not this individual really committed this crime. I think there's always been these questions about it. And so is that something that the prosecutor is thinking about when they head down this road yet again? I think inevitably they are.
And even in terms of Etan's parents, as a former prosecutor, what is it like for a family who's just been wanting justice? That's their end goal in all of this, but still they have to go through this court process over and over again. What's that like to talk to family members who just want justice for their loved one?
Yeah, I can't even imagine. We deal with this all the time when, someone waits for justice a year, 2 years, and now we're talking about, losing a child from, when the child was, 6 years old, would be in their, late 40s now. And so I can't even begin to imagine that. At the same time, as I can imagine that the family members want justice, they also want the person who is actually responsible for their child's death to be held responsible. I don't know their specific views about this defendant and what they believe and what they don't. I'm sure that the prosecutor's office, in part of their decision-making, is speaking to the family as well.
I guess we'll see what happens when prosecutors will make that ultimate decision and if we'll see jury selection in June of 2026. Julie Rundelman, I want to thank you so much for your time and your insight into this case. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Pedro Hernandez is currently incarcerated at the Clinton Correctional Facility in New York. And again, according to the judge's ruling, if jury selection does not begin on June 1st of 2026, Pedro will go free. That does it for this episode. Be sure to check out more episodes on the Law and Crime YouTube channel. But for now, I'm Elizabeth Millner, and this has been Inside the Crime.